Good morning, everybody. Pastor Jay. Welcome to the journey through the New Testament in 1 year, one chapter a day. Today we're in Acts chapter 10. The chapter starts with a man named Cornelius, a centurion. And he has a vision about the ninth hour of a day where he sees an angel. And the angel calls him by name and says, Cornelius. And of course, he was afraid and he said, "What is it, Lord?" And so the angel said to him, "Your prayers and your alms have come up for a memorial before God." Wow. What a commendation for a Gentile, a centurion, to get that his prayers, he's a praying man, and his alms, he's a giving man, have come up before God. So you might say, well, is this angel coming in response to his prayers and his giving? I would say more than that. The response that's coming to him is because of his heart for God. The prayers and the giving were a symptom of his heart. You know, Jesus said in Matthew 5, verse 6, the greatest sermon ever preached was the Sermon on the Mount. "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled." Cornelius was hungry for something more than what he had. And you can see his heart because his first question is, what do you want me to do? Is that the first thing we say to God? When we start our prayers, do we say, "God, what do you want me to do?" Or do we say, "God, I want you to do for me"? So his heart is so obvious. And of course, the angel says, "Send men to Joppa to get Peter." And he just does it. He doesn't pray about it. Once God has spoken to you, there's nothing left to pray about. There's only something to do about. So it's time for him to leap into action. Meanwhile, in Joppa, Peter, the apostle, is on the roof, and he doesn't have a vision. He falls into a trance. It's lunchtime. He is hungry, and God lowers in this trance a dinner blanket, a tablecloth, if you will, and it's covered with all kinds of food that Jewish people aren't allowed to eat. And Peter refuses it 3 times, and the Lord tells him 3 times, "Arise and eat." And finally, he says to Peter, "What God has cleansed, you must not call uncommon," Acts 10:15. It is so important for us to get this. How many people has God anointed and endorsed that are rejected by many Christians? Because it's not our standards that matter. It's his standards that matter. And he's not interested in your standards. He has his own. We need to get up with his standards. Then a voice said, "Okay, there's 3 men downstairs. Whatever they ask, you go with them. You do what they say." And what do? They invite him to a Gentile's house. So here is the mandate: go and meet at this house in Caesarea. Now, Jesus had never visited a Gentile's house. This is not something he had done. Yes, he ate with sinners. They were Jewish men. And so this is new. And this is why this whole supernatural trance had to happen to get him moving. And Cornelius, meanwhile, back in Caesarea, had invited a bunch of relatives and friends. He was like, "Boy, this is going to be something. I had a vision. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be big." Peter starts preaching to this group of Gentiles. And one of my favorite verses is Acts 10:38. Of course, he's talking about salvation and how we come to Jesus, the price that was paid. And then he says how God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit and with power, who went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed of the devil, for God was with him. Jesus was a man accompanied by God. He was God. He was filled with God. And while Peter was speaking these words during his beautiful 4-point sermon, the Holy Spirit fell and wrecked his whole meeting. And all of the people, the Holy Spirit fell on them. And it says that those of the circumcision in verse 45 were astonished because they saw that the gift of the Holy Spirit had been poured upon them. How can you tell? Did they change appearance? How can you tell? Did they suddenly start looking holier? How can you tell that the Holy Spirit, what evidence was there that the Holy Spirit had fell on them? Well, verse 46 is very clear. For they heard them speak with tongues and magnify God. So this is why many people, including myself, say that tongues is an evidence, not the only evidence, it's not the only thing that matters, but tongues is the evidence of the infilling of the Holy Spirit. It was something that made them know because they had seen it back in Acts chapter 2 on the day of Pentecost. They had seen it. It was a phenomenon never seen before. And here it is on the Gentiles. This is God's approval. The Gentile gate is open. The Gentiles come in. Pastor Jay is a Gentile. Many of you listening to this are Gentiles. But this promise is also good for any Jew. It already came on the Jews. And then Peter says, can any man forbid water that these men should be baptized, who have received the Holy Spirit, just as we have? He's basically saying if God's already accepted and received them and blessed them and filled them, who are we to say, nah, they don't meet our standards? It might seem silly, but as a teenager, there were men of God that I rejected because I didn't like the way they sounded. I didn't like the way they projected or mentioned things. And we should be really careful because God has his own standards and he will use who he will use. And then he commanded them to be baptized in the name of the Lord. And they stayed with him for a few days and they taught them. Mighty things happen in the Gentile church. We're going to find out about these things as we move forward, and we're still a part of it. Just imagine this. This very centurion may very well have been involved in the crucifixion of Jesus. Without the vision given to Cornelius, without the trance given to Peter, none of this would have happened. God does not need your approval for his plans to work. God does need your obedience for you to be involved in his plans. Are you prepared to be obedient to the plans that God has for your life? Thanks for joining us for the New Testament journey. We're one chapter closer. See you tomorrow for chapter 11. God bless.